ended the week with a few more gray hairs than I started the week just because of all the volatility as you were talking about. But in terms of the consumer sentiment numbers, I thought that was really interesting to highlight how there is a massive political divide in the United States. It showed up in that number. Consumer sentiment as a whole, so when you kind of average across everybody, it did move lower. But the big move lower was individuals who identify as Democrats. I was looking at the data that goes back to 1978 when they've been asking the question about your political affiliation and how you feel. The pessimism of Democrats has never been worse, going back to 1978. Now, what's been holding up consumer sentiment has been the optimism of people who identify as Republican. And also the independents seem to be somewhere in between, as you would expect to see. But yeah, that consumer sentiment number, it did kind of move a little bit lower. Still, I think, within historical norms. But yeah, there is that massive political divide that I think is showing not in just the consumer sentiment numbers, but even in the markets. I think people are sometimes letting their politics affect their portfolios.
Consumers are a big part of the economy, and they go buy things at retail. What are we seeing from retail?
Yeah, the retail reports that came out this past week were painted a slightly bleak picture, showing how this uncertainty is showing up in consumer spending behavior. Most of the time, consumer sentiment doesn't really affect spending. People just still go out and spend. But now we are seeing reports from businesses saying that it's actually showing up. There was a research firm where they said that sales at convenience stores year to date have declined 4.3%, which is a rather big move. They had never seen anything like it because people are kind of skipping some of those impulse purchases. You had Dollar General. They were saying how people are actually skipping certain necessities, trying to make their money go farther. The CEO of Walmart has said that for many consumers, not all of them, of course, but for many consumers in a growing share, that the month is longer than what the money is to get them through it. So it's still an environment in which maybe the top 40% of households by income are driving most of the consumer spending, but the other 60% seem to be still trying to make ends meet.
But I'm seeing that higher income levels are equally worried.
They are. That is showing up in something called the wealth effect. If the stock market, anytime you get market volatility, people who have a lot more wealth, they kind of feel it a little bit more. All of a sudden you say, oh gosh, my portfolio has gone down. They might try to economize on, maybe not make as big ticket item purchases. Some of the airlines, they, I think, have demonstrated this where United Airlines and Delta, they actually had a forecast saying that domestic travel for the first quarter is likely to be down pretty significantly because of as one of the CEOs put it, a dynamic macroeconomic environment.
Well, how about Southwest Airlines? I mean, the bags fly free has been forever, and they're going to take that away.
Oh, I know, which I'm glad that for spring break, we booked our flights before that takes effect so we can still get those free bags. But an activist investor has really been pushing them to become more profitable. And so they are trying to change their operations, even though for the longest time, they had that concept of transparency. They made up that word to be like, hey, one price, that covers everything. Well, they're going more the a la carte route now.
Got a new number for inflation, but does it count with everything else is going on? Because the next inflation number is going to look a whole lot different.
It will. I think that the inflation number that we got is going to serve as a good baseline for seeing what effect, if any, will tariffs have on inflation. I was reassured, though, by this inflation number because the consensus seemed to be calling for it to actually outrun, to move a little bit higher. And it moves slightly closer to the Fed's target instead. And that's incredibly important because the Fed, they meet on Wednesday and they are going to see this data, and at least it doesn't give them a justification or any reason to hike rates at this point.